Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary.
Hey guys, hope you're having an awesome day and maybe started seeing boundaries from a different perspective. If there was anything that really got you or you still have questions on the topic, let me know. I'd love to help you and give you more of what you're looking for. For today's episode, we have a topic that's been requested. We've been speaking a lot of people mentioned it actually, that a relationship with your partner starts with a relationship with yourself. Now, how do you go and have that relationship with yourself? Well, today, hopefully, we'll get our answer. We've got a mind-body compassion coach here and the host of the Tune In podcast. Thank you so much, Rena Reiser, for being here with us. Let's just dive right in. How could a person start being more compassionate?
How can we be more compassionate towards ourselves? If you notice, the first step is to kind of take a step back and be like, wow, how can I do that thing? Instead of it needing to be just follow the ABCs of exactly how to go about doing this. But really the first step is let's take a step back and pause for a moment. Can we look at this situation, whatever it is that I'm grappling with? Can I look at it almost with an outsider's objective opinion, a vision of what's happening here? Because so often the reason why we lack compassion to ourselves and why we might easily give that to our neighbor, our good friend, the cashier in the grocery store, the reason why we're more likely to give it to them is because when we can see what the person's experiencing, we can fill in the blank and help them see things from their perspective. But for ourselves, so often we're so wrapped up, which makes sense. We're living our lives. And so we get so caught up in the nitty gritty of everything that's going on. And so we have an inner critic. All of us have it. We have a negativity bias, right? That our minds will automatically go to the negative. And so in order to be able to bring in some compassion, we need to pause and see what's going on here. When we can take a look and see that there are all different parts to us that are interacting simultaneously. And we can see that there's a part to us, let's say, for example, that's a go-getter, that's really trying hard, that's really accomplishing. And then there's a scared, part of us. People might call this inner child, or just a part of us that's just scared, that's worried about succeeding, it's worried about being accepted. And then there might be a part of us that's just feeling a little bit lazy, a little bit bummed out, a little bit blah, And then there might be another part of us that's elated and excited about something in life. And when we can start to see that we have all these different parts to us, and we're not black and white, like either I'm feeling happy or I'm feeling sad. We can be feeling happy and sad simultaneously. And so when we can start to see there's all these different parts to us, then we stop looking at ourselves as either we're being successful or we're not being successful. And we can start to see where there's room to give ourselves things like compassion. Because when we give ourselves compassion, we see that the part of us that's feeling maybe rejected, sad, incompetent right now, worried, when that part gets compassion and we're able to be there with that part of ourselves. Like, for example, let's say a 3-year-old, right, drops their lollipop in the street. So a compassionate parent would bend down next to the 3-year-old and say, "Sweetie, you dropped your lollipop on the floor." And the 3-year-old would say, "Yes," and would start crying. And then the compassionate parent would embrace the 3-year-old in a hug. And the 3-year-old would feel a little bit better that the 3-year-old was being supported by somebody who loves them. And we all have that 3-year-old inside of us that's just waiting for somebody to come in and just say, it's okay. But part of the problem is that I think we focus so much on the part of ourselves that's, I should be better than this. I should be past this. I'm not 3 years old anymore. I'm, however old I am, and I'm a go-getter and I work so hard. But it's true. You are all those things. And you also have this part of you that could use some compassion, and it's okay. And it's, in fact, if you can give that part of you compassion, it'll feel supported and able to step up and to do the things that the other part wants it to be doing. And one thing I think is really interesting is that when we were kids, when we were little, we did not know how to live with paradoxes. The world was extremely black and white, right? So either I was happy or I was sad. And as adults, as we grow up, as we live life in the world that we're in, we're able to go from funeral to wedding and then back to something sad. We're able to hold both at the same time. It's not easy, but we're able to do it. We're able to live with the paradox, which we were not able to do when we were children. And when we can tap into that and realize that that's how we're going to be able to be successful in life is by being able to be there with the good stuff, the happy stuff, the easier emotions to deal with, and that we can also be there compassionately for the more difficult things. That's what actually helps us move forward.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of voice dialogue?
No.
So I'm not trained in it, but I'm trained in CJA, which like this non-dominant hand things, which he brings in a lot of voice dialogue. So I end up using it a lot of times with clients. And the way it works is you literally, like you said, talking about the different parts of you, you have the person, you have to do this with someone else because you need to be able to come on the outside. But like anyone who's listening could either get the book called Voice Dialogue or just try what I'm doing at home together with your spouse or with a friend. Just what you want to do is you take a chair, you sit in a chair. This is like your aware ego, they call it. Like you're in here, you're neutral. And then you have somebody else go and dialogue with one part of you. Because like you said, we have all these part of us. We have the part that's the achiever, the part that's protecting us, the part that's lonely. And when we're living, we can't really go and like differentiate between these parts. So you're consciously going and saying, okay, you come out of the chair and you go and you stand somewhere else in the room that is gonna represent, let's say, achiever. And you have a dialogue from that achiever's part of you with the other person. And then you could really go and understand what's going on in the achiever's mind. What's it afraid of? What does it want to do? And then you come back to your aware ego and you try it with the lonely part of you, and you go and do the lonely with the part of you that is angry, with all these different parts of you, and you go and try it. And then you could really, really, really go and become aware of those parts. And then you could make intellectual choices of what am I going to do? Because like I was just talking to someone the other day about how sometimes people go from one extreme to the other extreme. Like, let's say they say they're going to be achievers, and then all of a sudden they learn that, like, okay, you don't have to work so hard. So then they're going to, like, okay, I'm not doing anything. And it takes a lot of awareness to go and know, like, okay, so what's a healthy balance? You don't want to not be doing anything, but doesn't mean you have to work 24 hours a day. So how would you suggest to someone to go and become aware of the healthy, of like having compassion for yourself and being kind to yourself, but at the same time, making sure you're not like, oh, that's too hard, I'm not doing anything?
So I think in order to answer your question, well, so first of all, I want to just take a step back and say that it's very interesting, this voice dialogue thing, because it sounds similar but different to a modality that I use, which is called focusing.
Which is called what?
Focusing.
Focusing. Okay.
So it's different, sounds different, but
what
very
do you
similar.
do in focusing? Just out of pure curiosity.
So focusing, what you do, you go into a calm meditative sort of state, quiet meditative state. And then usually you have somebody who is leading you, and you're doing the focusing, and then you have someone sort of guiding you, and you get in touch with what's called the felt sense, the actual, like, what sensations you're feeling in your body. So just to use like an easy example that I think is more relatable to people, think about a time when you were really, really sad. So what will you notice? You'll notice that like your throat maybe got a little bit choked up. So your throat getting choked up, that would be a felt sense. Okay. Or if you got really, really happy and you felt like really expansive and your like shoulders were like all straight and your heart center like felt like more open, that's a felt sense. You tap into what you're feeling inside of your body, and you kind of have a dialogue with your body, essentially. This part of my body saying this, that part of my body saying that. And it's a really amazing way to come to reframes without like kind of bypassing the active cognitive mind, because you're in that quiet state. I mean, I'm totally
oversimplifying it. Yeah, but just to understand it in like 30 seconds.
Yeah. So that's it in a short nutshell. But to go back to your question about compassion and about somebody just saying like, oh, it's too hard, I won't do it. I don't think that's compassion. It's not compassionate to say to ourselves, oh, I just won't do this, it's too hard. Compassion is like is when we are able to say, this is hard. Stop. That's compassion. This is hard. And whatever choice I decide to make, whether I'm going to go ahead with that thing or not go ahead with that thing, that doesn't come into my calculation of my equation of whether this is compassion or not. It's acknowledging what's difficult for me. And it's acknowledging what my need is. We all have emotional needs. And so many of us are disconnected to what our emotional needs are. And we're so used to just plugging ahead and pushing forward and telling ourselves that we're not good enough unless we accomplish this thing, or if we look that way, or if we eat a certain way, or if we show up in our relationships a certain way. But if we can take a step back and see, hold on, there's an emotional need that I have. That's compassion, when we can give ourselves the emotional need, right? Going back to the example that I gave with the 3-year-old who dropped their lollipop in the street. The 3-year-old doesn't need another lollipop. They might want another lollipop, but what they need is they need support. They're hurt. A 3-year-old dropping a lollipop is probably like us, like, I don't know, having like $1,000 go up in flames or something, you know? And so when that happens, it's not like, okay, whatever, just move on. Yeah, life is fine. I'll just make another. It's, wow, that was hard. That's hard, right? People want support. There are universal human needs that we all have. We want to be supported. We want to be seen. We want to be loved. We want to be heard. We want to be acknowledged. We want to be a part of things. Like, these are all universal needs that we all have on some level. And being compassionate with ourselves is tapping into, what is that need that I have? So in order for us to be compassionate, we have to acknowledge what we're feeling, and then ask ourselves, what's the need? What's my core human emotional need that I have right now?
So it's like identifying the emotion and then saying, what do I need from this? Like from myself right now, how can I go and provide for myself in this situation?
Right. And a lot of people jump to, okay, well then maybe I need a nap. And it's true, you might need a nap, but it usually goes like, even, we have to drill it down even further. Like, okay, so you're tired and you should totally take care of yourself and take a nap if you're tired. But there's probably an emotional need that's going on here. Like, maybe I just want to be acknowledged for all the hard work I've been doing all day long in the office. You know, like I've been at the office for 8 hours and my boss hasn't said a single word of thanks to me all day long. I just need acknowledgement. So sure, my physical body could really use the nap, but emotionally, I want acknowledgement. And then self-compassion is recognizing that my boss might never acknowledge me for my work, but I can give it to myself. I can say, wow, you've been working really hard, and man, did you beat all those deadlines, and you've been diligent, and you've been productive today, and you've been showing tremendous determination at this job. That's giving ourselves compassion, right?
Yeah.
Not expecting it from everyone else, even though it would be nice for our bosses to give us that, right? For our family members to give us that. It would be really nice to get that. But first and foremost, we can give it to ourselves.
Yeah. A healthy person knows how, like, what they're feeling, what they need right now, and how to get it for themselves. Obviously, not always can they give it to themselves, but how they can go and ask someone else to go and help them with that. Now, I could imagine people listening and saying, like, okay, I know there's something going on here, but how am I meant to know what it really is?
Good question. So I also want to answer that, but I also want to just add one more thing to what you said before, that I think also it's important to recognize that we do live with other humans. We don't live on top of the mountain on our own. We're meant to be with others, and we're meant to give and take from others. But in order for us to, let's say, get what we want and what we need from others, we have to recognize what it is ourselves first. So if, let's say, just going back to that example of the boss, right? So if I recognize that I want acknowledgement, I need acknowledgement. So then I can turn to my boss and I can say, hello, boss. I've been working really hard and I would love to hear XYZ from you. And then give, just tell the boss, like, this is what I need. Would it be possible for you to give that to me? Boss might think it's a little weird, but depends on the boss.
Yeah, that is what it is. You're acknowledging yourself. You're taking care of yourself. Let's say even in that moment right now, right? If your boss is not there and you need that acknowledgement right now, you can go and do that for yourself. And then you could, like you said, you living with other people and you're going to go and take care of yourself and go out and do what you want to do. If you can't acknowledge it first, you can't expect anyone else to go and acknowledge it and to go and give it to you, because you're not communicating, you're not doing anything about it. but it really starts with self-awareness of, like you said, compassion and of knowing what's really going on. So that way you could really go and get what you want.
Yeah. And so now to answer your second question, what I think is really, really helpful is, first of all, to say, let's let go of perfectionism here, because you're probably not going to get it perfected, especially like the first, I don't know, I'm making up numbers here, but let's say like the first 100 times you try giving yourself compassion, you're probably not going to identify what exactly the emotion is and what exactly you need. But even just like trying, like, what am I experiencing right now? What am I feeling? What is a possible need that I have? That's already a huge step forward. But the second thing is that we live in the age of the internet and there's so much available. If you Google like list of needs or list of emotions and print off, I mean, I did this for a recent program of mine. I can't remember if it was emotions or needs, but there were like 300 or 400 different emotions or needs on that one little page. And so, there's so much information out there. So just Google it, print it off, keep it handy, keep it in your purse or your bag or whatever. And then when you check in with yourself throughout the day, try to identify so at first you might be able to identify like a general feeling, like this feels comfortable, this feels uncomfortable, right? And then let's say, let's go with comfortable feelings. So one side, okay, so I've identified it's a comfortable feeling. Can I take it a step further? Is it a happy feeling, right? Is it a calm feeling? Is it what else? What other categories?
There's like joyful, excited, entertained. That could like go on forever. We literally, like you said, we literally use like 8 or 10 emotions on a daily basis. It'd be such a smart idea to print out a list of emotions. You have like 300-400. Your vocabulary will go
right,
and you'll learn to really identify what it is. Yeah. So you're saying, so first start big, and then
you can start to zero in on it. So at first you might think like, okay, it's happy that I'm feeling. Well, what type of happiness? There's so many different types of happiness. There's so many different words for happiness. So can you zero in on what type of happiness am I feeling? And then, like you said, you can build your vocabulary that way and really build your emotional, a rich emotional world for yourself.
Yeah. I like that. So it's like, that is doing it in a compassionate way for yourself, because you're not being hard on yourself of like, I don't know what emotion I'm feeling, I can't do this, but rather like start even really small. Does this feel good? Does this feel bad? Just to put out their emotions aren't good or bad. They just make us in a good state, or put like that. We would feel that they're good, we would feel that they're bad, but they're not good or bad. They're just signals for us. So being compassionate to yourself is a really great way to go and build that relationship with yourself. What else could we do to build our relationship with ourselves so that way our relationship with our partner will grow deeper?
Okay, good question. So the thing that's coming to mind for me right now is doing something for ourselves every day. A lot of times I think in relationships, what ends up happening is our own, let's call it our emotional bank account, gets so depleted that we end up being needy and naggy and desperate to get someone else to fill it up for us. But when we can look at ourselves every single day and say, okay, what is at least one thing that I'm doing for myself every single day? That's just for me. It's not for anyone else. It's one thing that I'm giving to myself, one way that I'm committing to doing this thing for myself. And that'll help me fill up my emotional bank account so that when I come home to my partner or whoever I'm in relationship with, I'm then coming from a place where I'm already slightly filled up. And that means that I'm not desperate for them to do anything. That means that anything they do for me is an added bonus. And I'm also then able to come and I'm able to be so much more receptive to what they're giving me, because I'm not coming from this, I need, like someone who's like starving, right? Will just eat anything. You just give, and then it's not satisfying because they're so hungry that like they can't even be present and mindful with the food. So if you're so starving for that emotional money, in your bank account, then anything you're going to get from your partner is not going to be enough. So give yourself something every single day where you start to fill yourself up. And then anything you get on top of that will be that much more, it'll be so much better.
Yeah, it goes back to before of what we spoke about, first giving it to yourself, because the more you could take care of yourself, again, like you said, we live in a world of giving and taking and whatever, but when you take responsibility. You don't rely on your partner to go and give you love and to go and give you all the things that you need. When you go and you make sure to go and take responsibility to get it yourself, then, like you said, everything else afterwards is so much more, just add so much more, because just like you said, you're not starving. It's not like an empty tank that's just constantly on empty and just can't run. Yeah. Now, have you always been this way, like really compassionate to yourself and understanding? Like, how did you come about this?
No. Was that evil laugh good enough? Or should I make it more evil? No, my gosh. Okay, no, I was usually very, very hard on myself for most of my life. And my worst critic, as we usually are, most of us are our worst critics. I think the first time I heard the phrase self-compassion, let me rephrase that. Probably the first 50 times I heard the phrase self-compassion, I probably rolled my eyes. And this was even when I had already started on my own, personal healing journey. I thought it was ridiculous. I was like, no, we just have to keep going and just keep pressing ahead and keep going, And it took me a very, very long time to come around to this whole idea of compassion and to realize how important and critical it is for us to be able to really make any meaningful change in our lives.
So what was that? Like, was there a thing that like maybe you said like, hey, or what just happened over time?
It happened over time. I can't pinpoint any, one specific thing that made me be like, wow. Yeah, I can't pinpoint anything.
Process.
It's for sure a process. And at some point it just became clear to me that like, you're actually using that thing called compassion. And then when I was able to reflect back on it and be like, gosh, wow, like I've come so far. I remember there's a book called Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. And I bought it years ago, but I did not open it for the longest time because I was like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Just like you wanted it, but you weren't ready for it yet.
Yeah, like it took me a long time to come around to it. A very long time. I used to be extremely cynical and sarcastic and very self-deprecating. And yes, I've come around.
Just curious, yeah? Like, why do you use the word self-compassion over what a lot of people use self-love or self-care or things like that?
I think it goes deeper. I really think that, language is a funny thing in general because we use certain words because they've started to mean certain things for us. And then over time, definitions of words shift. And then we use other words and we try to redefine it. We try to, find the perfect word. This is the word that I think the world is using now. And so it's the word that I've adapted also. It's not why self-compassion over self-love. That's the word that's being used. I think self-love, I think the word love in general still has a really interesting connotation in today's world. I think people think love means one thing, but love, like when you love somebody, it doesn't mean that you're always ecstatic about being with them. Love just means that you're willing to be there with that person, take care of them, give to them.
Some people will say that love doesn't even mean you're willing to take care of them. Everyone has like their own. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think that compassion, for me, compassion is so much of us connecting to ourselves and to those around us on a soul level. That when we break it down and we realize that ultimately we're all just humans having a human experience, and I can realize that, if I got into a fight with my spouse and I can take a step back and say, wow, he's having a hard day. He's just a human having a human experience. He doesn't, he didn't want this thing to happen to him, or he didn't want to act that way, or whatever it is. And I can see that he's just a soul that was a little bit misdirected today, was a little bit misguided on his own, whatever. That allows me to see him as somebody who's someone I can relate to again, as opposed to it being personal. Like, it wasn't his soul attacking my soul. It was his lower self attacking my lower self. And if I can start to see him like that, then I'm able to say, wow, like ultimately he's a soul. And that's why I connect with him. And when I can see him for what he really is, then I feel closer to him.
Yeah, it was literally my next question to you was going to ask you how your own relationships and your life in general have been affected because of becoming more compassionate to yourself. And you obviously just said it's been more understanding and more connecting.
Yeah, I can add to it. And I can say that I really think that the more I was able to taste it for myself, what it meant to be compassionate to myself and realize I can do this. I can give this to myself. I can be there for myself. That enabled me to realize how much more I could give that to others. Meaning, I hope I was doing it before to some degree. I hope so. I hope I was being somewhat compassionate. But the more compassion I was able to give to myself and I was able to taste how wonderful it feels to receive that compassion, it makes it so much easier. And of course, you want to share that with others. Obviously, I'm not perfect and I have my bad days where I'm like super not compassionate to myself or those around me. But for the most part, it's like a switch that goes on. It's like, of course, I want to give that to others. Of course, I want to be that person.
Okay, so not to be like judgmental of anyone or just like your perspective, your opinion, and what you think, but because so many people unfortunately don't have self-compassion, do you think they have less, not no, but lesser of an ability to be compassionate to others?
I think in general, it's hard to give something to someone else that you've never tasted yourself. So I think that I'm speculating here, but I think it would be hard to find a person who, let's say, grew up in a super compassionate home where their parents gave them endless compassion and were always, always to whatever degree humans can always be there for each other, but, gave them whatever they could that person not be self compassionate? Like if they really were able to receive the compassion from their parents, they would probably naturally have a lot of self compassion.
I would say, I don't know, like just to jump in, but I would think that they would only be able to have that self compassion if the parents not only had compassion to them, but their parents also had self compassion. Because it's one thing to see someone else have compassion, it's another thing to, like to some other else, it's another thing to see them have it to themselves.
But I don't think you can give something that you don't have. So if a parent's not being compassionate to themselves, I don't know how much they could, because a person could go through the motions, right? And could crouch down. Let's just go back to that metaphor of the 3-year-old who drops their lollipop, right? A parent could crouch down next to the 3-year-old and say all the words. But if energetically she's like feeling really cold, the mother, the father, whatever, whoever's crouching down next to her is feeling really cold inside and distant and doesn't really care, but is just saying words, the 3-year-old's going to feel that, right? And the same thing with any compassion that anybody tries to give to someone else. If somebody's not being authentic, if they're not really delivering like on an energetic level or not really, their intention is not really there, the person's not going to feel that. Which is why I think it's so important that like we don't just say like, okay, yeah, what, like imagine, okay, yeah, what am I feeling right now? Oh, I'm feeling so sad. Okay, oh yeah, I'm sad. Right? It's like I'm going through the motions, I'm saying the words to myself, but ooh, that's not compassion. That's like the opposite. And so I think it's really hard for a person can't give what they don't have. And so if a parent doesn't have compassion for themselves, they're not going to be able to give that to their kid. So I think it has to start within us. If we want to be able to be compassionate to other people, we have to know what that's like and be able to radiate that out to the others around us.
Okay, so if anyone's listening and just like thinking this, like making fun of the whole thing, they still didn't get it, even though I don't know why after listening to this whole thing, you can't say, I'm going to start being more self-compassion to myself today. I'm just saying, if you're not self-compassion to yourself, you are being selfish because it's not flowing over to other people.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So for our very final question, it's a question that I ask everyone. I am going to ask you if you could please tell us what you think an extraordinary relationship is without using these 3 words: love, connection, and for you, I'm going to put in compassion.
Okay, let me see what an extraordinary relationship is without using the words love, connection, and compassion. So the word that did come to mind, extraordinary relationship, is acceptance. And I think that that word is also another one of those words that people throw around and don't like. I'll just
It makes me
explain.
so sad because to me, it's like one of my biggest values of just like accepting everyone for who they are and what they are. So yeah, but I love that answer. So what were you going to add to it?
I was going to say that acceptance isn't necessarily liking everything about someone. or liking everything about a situation. It's acknowledging what is. And that's what acceptance is. It's just, this is the person that I'm in a relationship with, and I accept them for who they are.
Yeah. No, like you said, it doesn't have to be you have to like everything about them. No, but as a person, as a soul, like you said, you like them for who they are. Awesome. I love that so much. Thank you so much, Rena. This was amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.